Jill Hassan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
How's your day going? I know you're in the UK, so it's about 5 p.m. right now where you're at.
That's right. Yeah, it's just after 5 o'clock in the afternoon. We've still got daylight. It's been a lovely sunny day, and the sun's still out there.
That's great to hear. So you have written several books, and
Yeah.
I know you teach personal development, which is something that is important nowadays, um, as it's always been. I came across your book, Emotional Intelligence, and you have extensive work. I tried to get as much in as I could, uh, but something that came out to me was being aggressive or having an aggressive behavior, having an assertive behavior, passive aggressive, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
What what a lot of people have trouble with understanding is the difference between being aggressive and being
Yeah.
assertive. As I've actually had dealt with this, I used to think that being assertive was just something that you were born with, that it wasn't a skill that you developed. And as I read deeper into it, I realized that it's actually a skill that you could develop, and it's an important skill to develop.
Yes.
Uh, just tell me a little bit about the difference between aggressiveness and being assertive.
Okay. So when you are assertive, you're very clear and direct about what you do and don't want, and what you do and don't need, what you do and don't like,
Hmm.
and what you do and don't want to happen. So you're clear and direct. You don't waffle. You explain calmly what it is that you want or don't want. And you also take into consideration the other person's needs or likes or wants. So you say what you do or don't want, and then you wait for a reply to that. Now, sometimes you might have to stand your ground and insist that things go the way you want them to go. And you can still remain calm. You acknowledge what the other person has said or needs, but you would respond with, "I know that, but I'm still going to want this or need this or go there or not go there or not do this."
Hmm.
And you take responsibility for that. You recognize that the other person might not like it, and there could be consequences. If, for example, you decide you're going to ask somebody for something, what are you going to do if they say no? If you've got the opportunity to think about it beforehand, it's really good to have a plan B. So if you were in a work situation and you wanted your team or your colleagues to help you with something or do something your way, or you wanted to speak to your team leader, your manager, and ask them to do something for you or allow something to happen, you've got to consider what you're going to do if they say no. So you've got to have a plan B. You
Hmm.
state what you want, you listen to their response, and if they won't cooperate with you, you decide what your plan B is. Quite simple. It's about knowing what you want, but acknowledging the other person. The difference between being assertive and being aggressive is that when a person is being aggressive, they just consider their own needs, wants, likes, and dislikes, and they're forceful about it. They make sure they're going to get what they want or make sure that they're not going to do what they don't want.
Hmm.
They can be forceful and very often loud about it and insistent, and they won't take into consideration what the other person does or doesn't want.
Yeah. So I know that this skill is actually very important in the workplace
Yeah.
because if you're not assertive and you don't put your foot down, people are going to walk all over you.
Yeah.
And from my own experience, in my current job, in my day job, I handle about 100 employees. It's, one of my tasks that I do is I manage expense reimbursements for employees and
Right.
about 100 of them. And when dealing with their money, they'll, you know, be a little taken back if there's something wrong with their with their money. And I'm always getting emails. I'm always getting angry emails. And the more that I've dealt with this, the more that I've been able to build up my assertiveness. Because if it's a skill that you don't develop in the workplace, people are going to walk all over you. And if you're in the position of being the one to walk all over someone, you may get them to do what you want, but they will build resentment towards
Yeah.
you. So you also need to understand it from both sides. From understanding that if there's someone in the workplace that you know that they're going to do anything that you want, they may do it, but they will build resentment towards you.
Yeah.
And that's not something good to have. And also you need to build assertiveness to not be the one to be walked all over.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. You need to I think the thing is, and one good thing, well, one of the good things
Mm-hmm.
about being assertive is that you can help other people be assertive.
Mm-hmm.
So you can help other people, whether they're passive aggressive, or not that that's their whole personality or character,
Mm-hmm.
but if they're inclined to be passive aggressive, or aggressive, you can make it very clear that you're considering their needs and wants as well. So you help them by saying, "What do you think? What were you expecting? What would you like?" It doesn't mean to say that you're going to give that to them,
Mm-hmm.
but you're letting them know that they are respected, in that their feelings, thoughts, opinions, and needs are valid. They're valid and they
Mm-hmm.
will be considered, but in the end, you might make a decision that this is where it stops, though. So if it came to a reimbursement with expenses and you'd
Mm-hmm.
explained, "This is how we've worked it out," for example, and somebody said, "Well, that's not right," rather than just go, "Well, that's it, that's the end of it." It
Mm-hmm.
would be, an assertive person would help the other person assert themselves and say, "Okay, tell me what your expectations were. What were you thinking? What were you expecting?" And then acknowledging that and saying, "Okay, I get it. I see why you thought this, or where you're thinking that." And then you explain it again. They might then come back to you and go, "Oh, right, okay, I understand." They might say, I still don't agree." But the
Mm-hmm.
thing is, you've given them a voice, you've given them a chance to be assert themselves and tell you what they do or don't want. So that's another really important aspect of being assertive, is inviting other people to be assertive.
Because the way that you react to the confrontation is how they're going to react to you. So
Yeah,
if you respond angrily, they may alter the situation from what it is. And now both of you are just arguing with each other. And that's never good. So that's also the big picture of emotional intelligence, understanding your emotions and being able to deal with your emotions, right?
yeah,
And it also plays a hand in mindfulness, which also came across, and being in the moment. And you can't really dwell on the past and dwell on the future, because it's very important to live in the now.
yeah,
You know, building this podcast, I'm doing everything on my own, and I'm always thinking about, like, where is it going to be, uh, feeling like I'm running against time, getting everything settled. Even you coming on, I wanted to make sure that everything was good, and I'm just dwelling on the future and what's going to happen. And even the more that I do this, I know that I shouldn't feel nervous about doing it. But the fact that I'm not being able to be in the moment, and it's something that I actually need to work on, because doing this call, uh, all the previous calls, possibly the future calls, there's really no reason for me to be nervous about it. I just want to make sure that everything is good. So it's something that I need to work on.
Well, yeah, but actually you are, the way you're feeling in
Mhm.
that sort of situation is in the moment, isn't it? So,
It is.
the thing is anxiety, excuse me, if we go back to emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
so emotional intelligence is understanding and managing emotions, both your own
Mhm.
and other people's, excuse me. Excuse me. Um, so with understanding emotions,
Mhm.
all emotions have a positive intent. It might not feel like it. Feeling guilty, for
Mhm.
example, it doesn't feel nice. We think of it as a negative emotion, but the
Mhm.
positive purpose of guilt is to prompt you to put right whatever it is that you feel that you've done wrong. Because when you feel guilty, you feel you've done something wrong.
Mhm.
And so guilt is put there to prompt you to put things right. Anxiety, feeling anxious about something, you can only ever feel anxious about something that is in the future. So
Mhm.
something you're thinking about something that might or will or could happen. Actually, we don't know for definite that something is going to happen at all. But we project ourselves with anxiety, and we get all
Mhm.
caught up in what we think could happen, might help. What if it goes wrong? What if it all breaks down in the middle of a recording? What am I going to do about that? So with mindfulness,
Mhm.
it suggests that we recognize anxiety, and so the positive message of anxiety is to prompt you to make as best preparations you can
Mhm.
now for the future. So if, for example, you were anxious about driving somewhere
Mhm.
next week, and you thought, "Oh, I'm not entirely certain." You were driving to another city. That's pretty simple, especially in the States, because it's sort of one highway from
Mhm.
one city to another. But once you're in the city, okay, you've got sat nav, but you still might be unsure, so you might be getting anxious about it. So you think about the preparations. Anxiety prompts you to think what you can do to make sure what you're concerned about happening doesn't happen.
Mhm.
So obviously, you'd have a sat nav on your phone. Maybe you might even think, well, I'm going to ask a colleague, a coworker, or a friend to come with me because I'm nervous about getting lost still in the
Mhm.
city. What happens if my car breaks down? Well, I'm going to join a sort of car rescue service. So all these anxieties. So anxiety drags you into a future that you don't know for certain that's going to happen. But with mindfulness, it recognizes that and says, but there's things you can do now in the moment to prepare for that. Now, when things are happening at the time,
Mhm.
it's not so much anxiety that you're feeling as stress. We get stressed in the moment. It's happening there and then.
Mhm.
So what a mindful approach suggests that we take things one step at a time. So we do this when we follow a recipe, or we make
Mhm.
even something that we've made many, many times before, cooked, prepared to eat. You know that, for example, in many recipes, you have to chop onions first.
Mhm.
So you do that first, then you look at the recipe and then it says, and then peel the carrots and then get some celery and chop that up and then some garlic. And then, so you do things one step at a time, and you can only do each of those things in the moment. And so in any situation at work, or at home, it's really thinking, okay, I'm not suggesting you write, well, people do. You write a
Mhm.
plan, this is what we're going to do first, this is what we're going to do next. Um, but whatever it is you're doing, it's about to avoid panicking and keep yourself in the moment. It's to like, okay, this is what you're trying to do now.
Mhm.
Sort this, fix this. Don't start worrying about everything else that's, yeah, but then I've got to do this, then I've got to do that. You'll come to that. You just do things one step at a time, thinking about what else you've got to do in a minute's time, 5 minutes' time, half an hour's time, just uses up headspace that you could be using to focus on what you're doing now.
So it's a little bit between anxiety and stress.
Yeah.
What do you think is really happening to me? I mean, I'm doing this podcast. I'm trying to make sure that the video is good. I'm trying to make sure that the audio is good, that everything is good. Is that the reason that you think that I may be feeling the anxiety, or is there something bigger than that? Because I mean, it happens all
No.
the time.
Yeah. I think it's just that you have a standard that you want to reach, which is great. It's to
Mhm,
be admired. You want things to go well, and you're clearly conscientious and recognize that you want to put something good out there. Uh, what sometimes happens is that maybe our expectations are too high about, and
mm,
I'm not suggesting that's the case with you,
mhm,
but, sometimes we get so stressed about achieving a standard that's too high. It's really not necessary. So we've got to sort of understand what our limits are, what the limits are of anybody else or any equipment or resources that are
mhm,
involved in what we're doing. We've got to recognize what the limits of that is, and just be realistic, and also, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, have a what we call a plan B. So that will be, okay, so if it does go wrong, if something does go wrong, thinking in advance, what will I be able to do about that? And that way you'll find yourself more prepared. So if it all goes really wrong, this is what I'm going to do about it. And I also think that that's something that I've learned in my own life,
mhm,
is a professional approach to it. I've found that if I've made a mistake, if things haven't gone well, I've owned it and thought, "Right, okay, what's the solution here?" So,
mhm,
I've forgotten to do something, I haven't done something maybe as well as I said that I could, or, maybe I haven't met a deadline on writing a book. I generally do, but I rather than, um, make excuses, I just think, okay, I look for solutions. Right.
mhm.
What's going to happen? What can I do here? So I take responsibility and look for solutions. It's about problem solving. And I think that's the sort of mature, responsible, professional way to go about things. And it just helps you feel calmer. I've already thought what I'm going to do if things go wrong. It's fine. I've
Mhm.
already got a plan B that's a good plan. It's not, "Oh, well, I'm just gonna give up." Well, no, that's not really a plan B, is it? It's not taking responsibility. So thinking through, having a solution, or maybe more than one option for what the solution will be, then you're like, "Okay, it's fine. I've already thought about this might happen, and this is what I've decided I'm going to do if it does."
So a little mix of living in the moment while actually goal setting and planning.
Yeah, definitely. It's planning is about doing something now for the future now.
Mhm. Yeah, because it's something that we all experience. We're all anxious. We're all stressed out about. A big thing is being stressed out about bills, about how am I going to pay for this, about how am I going to pay for that. So it's always about thinking what's going to happen in the future and stressing about it now, and
Yeah,
always
yeah,
being,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and always being anxious. It's something that we definitely need to work on. You know, mm, a lot of people read self-help books,
Yeah.
but they tend to not really follow through. What what
Yeah.
what do you think that is?
I found this on people come to sort of courses and classes
Mhm,
on, I don't know, confidence building, dealing with difficult people, the sort of personal development stuff, assertiveness. I think people are looking for some sort of magic answer, and
mhm,
there isn't one. The answers are all the same, and in fact, I don't really read other self-help books, but
Hmm.
I'm certainly familiar with lots of them. Um, and or I've had students that have said to me, "Oh, I read this book and it was about this and it suggested that and that you could take this approach." And I've sort of said, "Yeah, great," which is
Hmm.
what the same message you've been getting here from me and in this class. And the thing is, it requires effort on your part,
Hmm.
whether it's, one of the books I wrote was about managing being lonely.
Hmm.
And the key thing that came out of that from all the work I did on it and my own experience, friends, family, everybody is, you have to make an effort. People aren't going to come knocking on your door. And even if they
Yeah.
did, you'd still then have to make an effort with them. So with personal development and self-help, there's not some magic thing that's going to suddenly happen. There's not some secret and I often feel that that's what people are looking for. They're looking for some sort of secret shortcut that's going to make them confident, assertive, have lots of friends,
Hmm.
be able to manage their co-workers and get on easily with them, or whatever it is that they're looking for. Um, it requires effort. You have to put the work into it.
Hmm. Yeah, like a magic pill, right?
Yeah, yeah, they're
Yeah.
looking for that, and the books, pretty much everyone says the same. They might wrap it up in different ways and make it sound all glittery and fairy and everything, and others are much more down to earth. But they're, yeah, none of them say sit there and these things will happen to you.
Hmm.
I know there is the concept of manifesting, but even that
Hmm.
requires effort on your part.
No, it definitely does. And something that I'm actually kind of embarrassed to admit was about 10 years ago, uh, I came across the book How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
Yeah.
And I read that book so many times. I listened to the audiobook on repeat because I was always thinking, I no matter how much you read a self-help book, for some reason, it's difficult to apply that to your own life. I was about 20 back then, 18 or so. So I just read that book countless of times to make sure that I listen to what it says to be able to improve my relationships, with coworkers, with friends, family. So I just read that book and read that book until I could just memorize it. And I think I was looking for that magic pill, that just
Yeah.
looking for something just to improve my life. Even though I was putting the effort in, I wasn't really sure what steps I needed to take to be able
Oh,
to apply those principles to my own life. And it's because it takes time. Only by reading a book, you're not just going to change your life automatically. I think it's something that you practice, like assertiveness. It's not just going to be from one day to another. You're going to wake up and you're going to be this assertive person. It takes,
that's right.
it takes time. It takes patience to build this up. And like everything else, it's a skill that you develop and it's not going to be from one day to another. But it's something important because I used to be in a space that I didn't really know when to speak up if I didn't like something. And it wasn't until I came across that, I came across being emotional intelligent and understanding my own emotions and understanding what I was going through to be able to help me and develop the skills that I needed to develop to improve my life. And
Yeah.
and
I think that, yeah, sorry, Eric.
go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that, yeah, it's it's sort of two things really. Although I say, there's lots of books out there, what I find is that a lot of them aren't very clear what you have to
Hmm.
do or how it's applicable to your own life. And this is something that I know I'm good at and I'm skilled at,
Mhm.
because it's important to me. So when I was in high school, most of the time I was bored. I just didn't like being there. And if I wasn't bored, then it was because I didn't understand what the lesson was about, what we were doing.
Mhm.
And so I've really got a thing about being very clear and understanding something really clearly in order
Mhm.
to learn it and apply it to my own life. So anything that I've written about, I've made a point. So some of the research that I might have done, I thought, well, I don't and what? I don't understand it. What
Mhm.
does that mean? Or I've read some theories, and I'm just not clear. So I just keep reading
Mhm.
and writing it out until I'm sure that that I actually understand it, and I seem to be able to hit a level of understanding that
Mhm.
works for other people as well. So I get a lot of feedback saying that, I make difficult concepts easy to understand, and that's because I've worked really hard to try and understand them myself,
Mhm.
or that I've made easy concepts. I've given practical ways to apply them in your own life, because that's what I've learned from the courses and classes that I've done, is that the theory is interesting. Um, yeah, it's often the science, and the theory is often very interesting. Again, if you can explain it very clearly.
Mhm.
Uh, but it's like, yeah, that's great. I found that really interesting. But what I want to know, people want to know, but what do I do and how do I do it? How do I apply this in my own life? So a lot of books are not clear. So, hence, for
Mhm.
example, you may have been reading and rereading and
Mhm.
thinking, yeah, this all makes sense. But what do I do? You're looking for that one thing. So I think it's important as well not to panic if a book isn't clear, but you get one thing out of it. If there's one thing that you've learned from it, that's great. Okay, books cost money, but
Mhm.
if you can get it from the library or get it at a secondhand from, from one of Amazon's secondhand sort of offers, you could, if you had 20 self-help books and you got
Mhm.
one thing out of each of them, that's 20 new things that you've learnt.
Yeah.
And as you said, it takes time. You're not going to be able to do all those things at once. This is
Right.
why, I certainly couldn't have written when I was 25 or 30 the
Mhm.
books that I have. I'm in my 60s now. As well as the research and that I've done, I've learned a huge amount myself just from living this long and being interested in my own development
Mhm.
and social development.
And did you always want to write books, or is that something that
No,
just happened?
no, not at all. English was my favorite subject at school. I
Mhm.
really enjoyed reading and writing. I really enjoyed. Never occurred to me in any way that this would be something that I would do later in
Mhm.
life. What I found after I'd had my children was that actually I did a degree once I'd had my kids. So I was in my 30s. I did a degree in social anthropology because I'd lived in Europe and America
Mhm.
there.
Oh, and
And
you just
I was
froze a bit.
on one side, my family agreed. I was very interested in other cultures.
Mhm.
So I did a degree in social anthropology. But then what really interested me was because I'd done a university degree in my
Mhm.
30s, which was something that I never thought I'd be able to do. I didn't think I was clever enough. I
Mhm.
realized that actually we've all got the potential to do a university degree. I'm not suggesting
Mhm.
everyone does, but I genuinely believe that we've all got the same level of intelligence, that we have different skills, but as long as we haven't had any brain damage, we're all capable of achieving a huge amount. So that's what I wanted to do, was go into teaching and helping people to be more confident, good communication skills, study skills. I taught at the university, study skills, building confidence in your ability to study, And out of that, the books came that
Mm-hmm.
myself and a co-worker spoke to a publisher and said, we've got an idea for a book on resilience because
Mm-hmm.
we've been teaching a lot around that. And this publisher said, yeah, that would be great. You know, you're both
Mm-hmm.
from university. Yeah, we'd love to see a book on how to be resilient. So it's a very practical book. And from there, yeah, went on to write more books. I've just, offered to, what else would you like to write about? What else can you write about?
So after that first book, you just thought of like what else you could write and what else you could write, and all these ideas just kept flooding in, right?
Yeah, yeah, just things that I was interested in. So yeah, the next one was about being assertive, which myself and my co-worker Sue wrote together because we taught a lot of that. And then I was interested in the idea of emotional intelligence. I really didn't know much about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I suggested this to the publisher and they said, yeah, that would be great. So that
Yeah.
involved a lot of research on my part because it wasn't something I knew a lot about. The assertiveness was really easy it was just sort of writing out what we used to teach, but emotional intelligence was fascinating to me. So some things, it's been something that I've known quite a lot about. Mindfulness, I knew very little about that, but I was
Mm-hmm.
very interested. I've been very fortunate with publishers that I've been and my editors
Yeah.
that I've come up with ideas and somehow they've gone, yeah, that's a great idea. Why don't yeah. So yeah, so although English was my favourite subject at school, it never occurred to me that being an author was just something that other people did. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I sort of fell into it by accident. So that's
Yeah.
great.
And what goes into the process of writing a book from the idea, from the concept into the research? Is there something new that you've learned from all this research that you've done for the books?
Yeah, emotional intelligence, something I
Uh-huh.
mentioned earlier when we were talking was the idea that um, all emotions have a positive intent. As I
Mm-hmm.
said, they might not feel nice, resentment, regret, anger.
Mm-hmm.
Anger has a positive intent. It's to motivate you to take action against something that you feel is not right or is unfair. The problem, obviously, with anger is when it gets completely out of hand and eats
Mm-hmm.
us up, or we start to get physically violent about it. But it's a great motivating force. You can be angry about some sort of political situation, some sort of unfairness, and it motivates you to do something. So, yeah, I learned about being about the positive intention of emotions. I've learned a lot through mindfulness about being more grounded and in the moment and taking things step by step to not be stressed. Some of the things I've said to you are some of the things I've learned from writing the book.
Mm-hmm.
Take it step by step. Anxiety, okay, prepare yourself so that the worst can't happen. Yeah, I've learned a lot of things. I've not ever really particularly been lonely myself, but I've recognised that it is because I make an effort. I am a sociable person, but I recognise it requires me to, reach out, respond to other people. They invite me out, I invite them out, and
Mm-hmm.
that do things for other people. So some of the things that I've written about have confirmed how I live my life, and others things I've written and researched have been all new to me.
Because in emotional intelligence, you also cover that there's certain emotions that there's no word for it in the English language,
Yeah, yeah,
which was also something fascinating because although there's, anger, sadness, sometimes there's things in the middle that you don't really know how to explain it because there's no English word for that. But,
yeah.
you know, it could be covered in German or in Spanish. So
That's right. Yeah.
that was something that was actually pretty fascinating. And yeah, because there's all these emotions and there's emotions deeper than what we really understand or realize. And
Yeah, I think it's important to have a wide emotional vocabulary, and we tend each of us tend to have a very limited vocabulary
Hmm.
for expressing how we feel. You know, we're angry or we're happy or we're sad or, you know, there's angry, you know, sometimes I might say, you know, I know I'm pretty good at this. You know, a friend will be describing something and they'll go, and I felt really, and from what they've already described,
Hmm.
I might jump in and go, "Frustrated?" And they go, "Yeah, yeah, that's exactly it, frustrated." And they were probably gonna say angry, but there's a difference. It's, you know, so it anyone who's got children,
Yeah.
you can it's a really good thing to introduce new words and the variations on different
Hmm.
emotions. Just look up, Google "list of emotions" and start using some of those words. Look for what's the most appropriate word to describe how you feel. Introduce words to children, um, to help them. Otherwise, you just have this limited sort of, I feel angry, happy, sad.
Hmm.
There's not there's not much else, but there's, as you've said, lots of words to describe emotions, and it's really helpful for us to express ourselves, understand ourselves and other people if we can widen our vocabulary.
It's just like senses, and people saying that we have six senses, and no, we actually have about 30. The six senses are just the basic ones, but it goes deeper than that.
Yeah, we have, for example, intuition is one of our senses. That's an ability to pick up. You just know something
Hmm.
is right or that something is wrong. And actually, what happens, intuition is a whole bunch of things that our experience we already know, and it suddenly all comes together in our brain and tells us, "Nope, this isn't right," or, "Yeah, this is right. This is the way to go." So, an example I always give is one time I was walking years ago, in Spain along a beach, and one of my kids, I was
Hmm.
holding his hand, he was walking along a low wall, and these, local women sat on the wall, and then I picked up my son, sort of carried him round, and then he continued on the wall. They got up, walked past, sat on the wall
Hmm.
again. I didn't really think anything of it. Then they got up again and walked past me, and something just I suddenly realised a minute later, I thought, "Oh, hang on," and I looked in my purse and my wallet had gone. And it
Mm.
was just something all came together, and I realised looking back, it was just the way these women were behaving, and I don't know, it didn't seem particularly odd at the time, but suddenly it all came together, and the fact that they'd walked past closely when they did walk past me the final time, and sure enough, I spotted them in the distance and ran after them and started remonstrating with them, and, only 2 of them were there, but the other one came back, and I felt her just drop my wallet back into my purse. So I couldn't have explained it just all came together. So talking
Mhm.
about other senses, yeah, we have intuition, something that we can't explain, but suddenly we have this knowing, and actually what it is all this previous knowledge and experience, like a computer,
Mhm.
suddenly you know, you press the button and there's the answer. It comes up. Well, that's what happens in your brain. That's another sense as well.
And you also cover this in the emotional intelligence book. I remember reading about it. That
Yeah.
you actually
Yeah.
talk about that. And
Yeah.
there's a reason that we have that gut feeling. And it's not always wrong because a lot of the times it's there for a reason.
Yeah. And we can't always explain it at the time. We just feel like, no, this is just not right. Things just don't feel right. We read stories about this, about other people as well, where they maybe avoided some sort of serious issue where they just everything just didn't seem right, and um, they avoided. You know, afterwards they go, "I knew things weren't right. I couldn't explain it, but just I knew it. It just wasn't the right thing." Or people, you know, even, you know, lovely stories about romantic stories about
Hmm.
people, you know, get together because there's just something about someone else that everything adds up for them, that this is the right person for me. And
Hmm.
they, all right, you could ask them to write it all down and list it, but they just go, no, I just knew this guy or this woman or this other person was just within, a day of meeting them, just everything came together. So again, that's our intuition, our gut feeling, everything
Hmm.
coming together. And yes, certainly sometimes it's wrong, or we want it to be right. We want our intuition to be telling us something.
Yeah.
And so, but generally, I think, if we feel something's right or we feel it's not right, then we need to listen to that.
Yeah. And it's, uh, we hear it a lot in the news, also, taking it a little bit depressive, but people are often asked when something bad happens, about a certain individual, and they say there was always something weird about them,
Mm,
you know, or I always had a feeling there was something going on, but I just couldn't understand it. And that's when it happens.
yeah, that's a really good example. Yeah, yeah, yeah. People, yeah, we hear people in the news say that. Yeah, it just didn't add up. There was something strange about that person. I know that they appeared nice, good, or whatever it was, but there was just something that didn't add up. And then they might say, and now that I've found out this about them, now I realize that that was what it was, that I was there, but I just couldn't put my finger on.
Yeah, well, listen, it was a pleasure meeting you, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
That's great, Eric. I've enjoyed chatting with you. It's been really nice. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. And hopefully we stay in touch.
Yep.
But but thank you so much.
Okay. Bye for now.